Hello, and thank you for joining us for this very special live edition of AMA's Marketing In. I'm your host, AMA CEO Bennie F. Johnson, and we're coming live from our AMA Executive Marketer Summit here in Chicago, Illinois. Today, our special guest is Greg Boone, the Chief Executive Officer of WalkWest. Greg is a digital innovator with more than 25 years of experience in marketing and emerging technologies. He brings expertise in Gen AI and strategic growth for acceleration to his agency. His proven track record of driving marketing ROI will be essential as WalkWest's continued mission to create authentic brand experiences that yield quantifiable business results for its clients. Greg, my friend, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Benny. Thanks for having me.
It's really fun for our conversations to talk about just how similar our journeys are in the space in there. Tell a little bit about how you find this love for marketing that takes you to your position of being a CEO. I love the story of the marketing guys becoming the CEOs.
Right. Yeah, I think that, for me, I take a step back and just kind of a little bit of my background. So I'm born and raised in North Carolina, right? I come from a very kind of blue-collar family, so work ethic is a part of everything, right? My dad's a retired truck driver. My mother worked in mental health and was a caseworker and social worker, right? So I've always been able to understand how to read people in psychology as well as follow directions, right? And so through my career, I've really focused on learning as much as possible. But my actual background and my degree is in computer science. So I was a tech first guy, business second, marketing third. Right now, I'm a CEO that's running a marketing company that leverages technology. Right. So all of it is kind of mashed together and kind of what made me and brought me to this place. Right. But I love the idea of being able to shape hearts and minds and to be able to really drive storytelling and messaging. So it's been a passion of mine for many years now.
When did you realize that this was a passion? You're kind of putting these things together that on the surface seem very desperate, but when we think about today's world, they're perfectly aligned. When did it kind of click for you?
I think what clicked for me was really understanding, I tell people all the time, sorry to jump right into it because I do a lot in the AI space, right? But I tell people all the time, it's like in the age of AI, right, where anyone at the push of a button can generate any amount of, content. I always say to folks, what makes me different is that I can be on camera, on stage, on point all the time, right? And what that was all about authentic storytelling, the idea that your message may be very similar in nature, but I'm going to be able to communicate it in a way that's going to change how you view me, change how you view the world, change how you view this business or this opportunity. And so I started to understand the power of messaging and marketing and branding, right? I've even trademarked AI Serious, because I was trying to make a point to my team that branding matters. Right. What you call yourself, how you position yourself, and how you go about life really matters. So that's really the unlock for me, is once I understood, it doesn't matter if we have similar messages. I can shape it better than you.
So when you think about, that's one of the superpowers of marketing, being able to kind of break through the noise. As you work in your role, a lot of your work is dealing with innovation. It's really dealing with unlocking that breakthrough value of what's next. What advice do you have for marketers who are listening on how to harness the power of innovation?
The first thing I would say is that we all get in this space, whether it's from technology or marketing and business. I was talking to someone yesterday at the conference, and I said, it's funny to me how you interview folks when they're coming in the door, and they say to you nonstop, I want to be a continuous learner. I want to be a constant learner. And then we get to this point where we feel like we've learned enough. And we stop wanting to learn, right? I just don't have that in me. I have 12 different certifications related to AI. I have different certifications. I try to at least take 2 or 3 courses every year on something, right? So my first thing I would say to marketers is go get certified, go get trained, really start to explore what's next. Stop just kind of resting on what you've learned and done for the last 20 years, because it's always changing, right? The other thing I would say is one of the things, especially as I talk about AI and transformation and digital transformation in general, when you talk about humans and machines, the thing that I say to folks all the time is there are 5 characteristics, or the 5 C's of humanity that machines can't replace, right? That's curiosity, creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration.
Okay.
Right. Marketers are the only people I know in any organization that can check all 5 of those boxes.
Right. You have to say that again out loud because it's so true. And sometimes as marketers, we don't really harness that power. That when we look around, we think about being at the table. A lot of our conversations about being executives at the table, that we bring the harnessing of those 5 skills to the table, to your point, which really has us stand out from the rest of the executive suite.
But we don't do a good enough job telling folks and explaining why that matters, right? Really using that as a springboard to being that, strategic leader in the organization. You absolutely should be there. You're the storyteller, and you can figure out how to quantify the things that you're doing.
Right.
Like you're innate in these qualities, right? Go do these things, and you're going to be the expert at the table, and you will always have a seat at the table.
Right. And we've seen that in the recent evolution of chief marketing officer roles. And like I said, the number of marketing leaders who are emerging in the CEO ranks, because you take that understanding the customer, understanding the data around the customer, and then putting together imagining the future of the business.
Right.
That's CEO conversations, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm CEO of a smaller agency, and I, work with a lot of C-suite leaders, right, in general. And what I've seen over the last couple of years, and in a lot in the last 6 months, is you kind of have 2 camps.
Okay.
You have the CMOs that are growing into strategic leaders, if not CEOs themselves,
Right.
And then you have organizations that are just clipping CMOs left and right and dropping them, because they don't understand the strategic value, don't understand that these CMOs are actually futurists. They are brand architects. They are folks that are really, focused not just on the customer and the customer experience, but the employee experience, right? The internal culture and understanding how to sell to, through, and with your C-suite organization, your employee base, right? Tie back to value. There's just so much additional value that folks aren't really viewing as it relates to what the CMO can actually do.
Right. A big part of our conversation yesterday was seeing around corners. Right. And to your point of being the futurist means that your work may not be understood in the business today, but is tantamount to the success of where you're going tomorrow. So when we talk about AI and its role in organizations, I actually want to take a pause there. When did you first realize that we were fully in an era of AI? We talk a little about humans and machines, but when did it really hit you that the change was coming faster and faster and it was happening now?
I think there was a few times over the last 5 or 6 years, a few critical inflection points, The first was the pandemic. Right. When these companies looked up and said, actually, it doesn't take us 2 years to come out with a vaccine. We actually have this secret weapon, that we can figure this stuff out faster. But being in marketing, AI has been around for a long time. Predictive analytics, machine learning has been used in programmatic media buying and things for many, many years. So the first was the pandemic, when folks were like, okay, but it's very specific purpose. We're okay with that. The second was fall of 2022 when ChatGPT launches. I always tell folks, I'm like, that gave the rest of the business and marketing community air cover to do some of the things that they knew were possible. And I would say the third time was when I got the opportunity. I was a part of, I sold 2 companies ago, a company, Blue Acorn ICI. We sold to Infosys back in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. We could talk about that later. That was an interesting time to go into the process.
All right.
But in 2023, at the beginning, they put me on this constellation project and really started to understand and wanted to understand, hey, how is Gen AI going to affect our organization? How should we use it and think about it, as we move and we progress through these changing times? We just we're 3 years into a pandemic, There's this new thing now that's coming. And as I started to lean in and start to understand, I was like, whoa, there's a lot that can be done with this. And this is going to be highly disruptive. Because the traditional ways that people were going about anything from data to how you were reformatting information, how you were finding information, the ability to streamline, if not cut down on the number of people that were needed for certain things, Then I started to realize, oh man, so this is beginning of 23. So by that summer, I had made the decision. I was like, you know what? I really need to, my brand is to be this futurist. I know this thing is out there. I'm comfortable in my current seat, but I really want to be on the forefront of what's next. I never want to be caught on my heels. So those 3 moments culminated to what actually brought me here to where we are now.
It's interesting thinking about those kind of pivotal moments as we look back, right? Seeing that we've talked about before, that AI has been such a part of our marketing toolkit, whether we recognize it or not. Having that moment in which the Band-Aid comes off and the whole world gets a chance to play around with it. But then thinking about, our conference this week and this session has been about disruption in the face of disruption.
Right.
Like you said, stepping into that fear. When you think about organizations now, and we're going to just hyper-focus on the marketing part of the organizations, what advice would you have for marketing leaders to kind of push through these disruptive moments? You mentioned staffing resources, talent resources, kind of scope of vision and what we can imagine. What advice would you give as people are navigating? Because this can be kind of daunting.
Yeah, and it is. And we've had a bunch of side conversations at the conference, and I can always tell folks, I'm like, look, I always am trying to move folks from anxious to curious to serious, right? Whether that's in AI or CDPs or whatever the innovation of the time is, right? Going through that spectrum. And the advice I would give them all the time is like, look, you have to align your goals with the CEO and the rest of the C-suite's goals, right? I always use alliteration, so I apologize. But I tell folks, like, you have to move, align with your CEO and move them from vision to value, right? This man or woman has a vision of something they want to do, and they need to turn that into actual value, right? You have the skills, knowledge, and expertise to do those things. So thing one is you have to align yourself. I think Bridget, one of your panel guests, Bridget Winston from Chief yesterday, she talks about, you have to align with the P&L, right? You have to first align with the P&L. If you're a marketer, like, you can't hide behind these vanity metrics. Align yourself with the P&L, right? And another thing Bridget said is that you either have to grow revenue or save money, right? And sorry to keep kind of belaboring the point around AI, but between AI and data and a lot of these other innovations, you finally have something that can unlock and speak to both the saving dollars and grow at the exact same time. Never before in my career did I actually had a viable, credible tool that could do both of those things. So now I can win the hearts and minds of the CFO. It's like, hey, I'm going to save money. The CEO, we're going to grow revenue. Then the employee base, we're going to help you upskill. We're going to be at the forefront of innovation and how we're changing the culture. We're going to be the calm through all this chaos as marketers. And you have the ability to create a story around it all that is quantifiable, that is engaging, that is memorable.
And I think that's the key inflection point right here. Like what you just described takes all those creative tensions, that we know these powerful things come when you can harness the creative tensions. And you said that are we effectively spending? Are we saving money? Are we doing more with what we have? Important box to check, right? Are we pushing, as we know, the CEOs and boards are pushing growth. But then are we, in any organization, you're only as good as the staff members who make up your core. Are we empowering them to move forward? These are really powerful points that you have in there. And I will say another point, and you don't have to apologize for alliteration, my computer science friend. You've clearly made the transition from computer scientist to business leader to pure marketer. So,
I had to figure out, words matter, is all you get.
We talked about it. Words matter, right? And how we move. I love that arc moving from the anxiety. Because we see that. We see fear coming up in our research that we spend there for market leaders, right? They're afraid, and they have teams and businesses who are afraid. How do you move from that to the curiosity, which opens up the ideas? And then to your point, tagging your space that you mentioned before, I want you to talk a little bit more about that, about Gen AI serious.
Yeah, so I call myself AI serious. I say one of the fundamental challenges that I'm seeing a lot in businesses is AI adoption, right? How do people move from anxious to curious, right? I told my team, even as a board member, 6 months ago, I said, look, I need you guys to be AI curious because I'm AI serious, right? And I was telling them, and then more recently, I said, look, I'm not doing this because I just want to jack you guys around, right? I'm doing this because there's both a threat and there's a very clear opportunity, right? I'm not going to be one of these marketers that just willingly walks off a cliff, knowing, what's on the other side, knowing that there's this bottomless pit. Right. And so when I tell folks all the time, it's like, hey, how can you get a broader team to start to adopt these technologies? I said, we got to do three things. One, you got to make it personal. As CEOs, we have to stop talking just about the business cases and how we as the organization want to use these technologies. Make it personal. The second thing I do is I said, you got to make it fun. There's so many other tools that you can use and do, things with AI. You can make songs with Suno. You can make videos, imagery with Midjourney and some of these other pieces. And then the third piece is you have to make it safe.
Yeah.
There has to be a safe space that you're empowering your team to fail, because you will fail.
Right.
Marketers are used to experimentation, and
It is so important. I mean, I'm a big believer in creating play. Right? When we have that space, when you grew up, you had a safe space where you could play. Didn't matter. You could build a house out of sand.
Right.
And dirt and trees, right? You could swing for the fences. You could jump off things. And if you got hurt, you brush it off.
Right.
And you come back and do it again.
Right.
Right? But how do we continue that space? At one point in time, the CMO role was considered one of the quote-unquote most dangerous jobs in corporate America because of that high tension and turnover. Yeah. How do we continue to create that space so that, we look to at organizations to lead with all the 5 skills we talked about? We look to kind of see the future. How do we still maintain that safe parameter where we can come in there and our fellow marketing leaders can play?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I always try to do, any type of, I intentionally try not to use the word change management, because people don't like to be changed.
And they don't want it to be managed.
And they don't want to be managed, right?
Right.
So there's certain words I try not to use. I try not to use the word strategy, because I got tired of debating with folks their definition of strategy and what's meant by it, right? But the point of it, you do have to understand what are the values, what drives each one of the individuals in the executive suite, as well as those that are under you. Right. So you have to, as a marketer, you need to be able to manage up and down. Right. You need to be able to manage the executives around you. Right. Again, you have the expertise. You should have the communication skills.
Right.
You have the creativity and the curiosity. Meet them where they are.
Right.
Know what drives and motivates those folks that are above you or your peers and those that are below you, because you need to identify internal champions. Right. So give the CFO a win. Right, by, hey, this is how I'm going to cut costs and continue to drive the same level of value.
Right.
Give the CEO the wins that they're looking for. Like, hey, I know your vision is to do this. This is how we can get there, when we can get there, right? The team that I'm going to need. And then with the more challenging pieces, how do you convince the CIOs and the CTOs, right, that you're not on this tug of war on the marketing technology stack?
Right.
Then I would say the fundamental piece, though, that is missing, that I'm spending a lot of time these days, is the CHROs. The teams, the people leaders that are going to be required, right, to upskill the broader swath, right? See, part of the problem set as relates to AI is that it impacts every single employee.
Right.
It doesn't just impact marketing, doesn't just impact IT. But what happens is, in these narratives I keep hearing, people are solely focused on marketing and IT, not realizing now that it impacts everyone. So when you say, I want to use it for marketing, or I want to use it for this thing, 90% of your organization, all they hear is AI is going to replace me, because you haven't even tried to make it personal for the HR folks, the operations folks, the sales folks.
So you've given them no way to invest into what this means, right? So if you don't, I'm a big believer that if you don't talk about the future, then you're not planning to be in it.
Yes.
Right? And that's a powerful space. And when you spread that out to your teams, if you're not talking with them about a future that's in there, you're designing a future that they're not a part of.
It's implied that they're not a part of it.
It's like, you didn't ask me what I think because it doesn't matter, because I'm not going to be here. And, when you hear that logic in there, it's very human to walk through that. But I think sometimes, to your point, as leaders, people forget that.
They do.
And this is that moment of anxiety to curiosity to let's be serious. This is how we win.
It is very self-inflicted right now, in my view. Like, people ask me why I'm in the consulting space and not running some bigger company. I said, well, I get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of all these larger organizations. Right. Sometimes very ugly. Right. Sometimes there's a lot of infighting, but overall, if you can help bring more synergy, more calm to the chaos, and then to your point, show them all where they play, where they have a seat at the table, where they have a role in the future of the company, not just in today.
Right. And getting us excited about the future.
Right.
The big part of the theme of this gathering is like the safe space for marketing executives to come and kind of have breakthroughs about the future. What do I have may not be what you have. Where I'm envisioning may not be the same, but how do we kind of encourage each other?
Yes.
To kind of push through that. I love the notion of getting a chance to get a peek into all the work that's happening. You're seeing in there. What's the one thing you wish your future clients knew as they come into it? How to get the best out of having additional resources? What is the one thing you wish they knew?
I wish they had a greater appreciation to the time that required for your marketing actions to actually deliver value. There's such a lack of appreciation for that, right? So very, case in point, last May, I call it Google turning the lights off from a keyword and organic search perspective, right? When Google, went to AI overviews, when AI search started to take a hold, right? A lot of organizations, I would talk to these CEOs and I would talk to marketing leaders and other folks, and I would ask them, I say, hey, how often are you scrolling past the AI overview, right? And they say, not often at all. Like 98% of them. I interviewed 70 folks. And I said, well, what do you think that's going to do to your lead flow and your organic traffic? I said, how often are you clicking through on emails, that are coming through? Almost never. I said, so what do you think that's doing to your lead flow, right? And these are for middle market and lower companies, right?
Who've built their business.
They all
on
built
that old paradigm.
They all built their business. And I said, this is radically changed, right? And so for 6 months, people are like, oh, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad. Right, because it takes 6 to 9 months of lead time between your marketing actions and the results that you see. You start running that calendar out by the end of last year and really going into January and February, HubSpot went viral because their blog traffic dropped 80% year over year, right? Now, they had been talking about it. They had already been diversifying their strategy. But it wasn't until that moment that people started to appreciate, oh, man, I should have been doing something for the last 6 to 9 months. Right. But because you didn't feel the pain immediately, because marketing doesn't work that way. Right. People say, go run this campaign. I want $1 million tomorrow. Doesn't work that way.
And in some spaces, you've already sold in your C-suite. We talk about how hard it is to get people aligned. So in our very disruptive change moment, you've gotten everybody on board. If this is what we're doing. And now you got to come back and tell them it's changed.
Yes.
But Greg and Benny, you told me that that was true. 2019. It's not true for 2026.
100%.
But what is the value that we go into is what is our business value going to be in 2026? So, Greg, one last question, my friend. If you had just one word to inspire all of the marketing leaders that are going to sit down and listen to us, what would that be?
One word. Oof.
One word.
Wait, you just ask a marketer that wants to tell a story.
Yeah, I know.
To net it down to one word.
I know. You get a Mark Twain moment.
I'd say learn.
Learn.
Right? I just want us to learn. Learn more. I tell people all the time, I say the greatest thing I ever learned in college was how to learn. And I take that with me. So now I've figured out my ways of learning. And it's not the same for everyone. But learn how you should learn. That is going to take you miles, away from the competition, right? And so just learn, explore, right? Experiment. There's a lot of one-word things that we can do.
But they're all laddering to the same space,
100%.
we said before. So if we want to win the future, if we want to design the future, if we want to lead the future, we need to learn.
We need to learn.
Thank you, my friend, and thank you all for joining us for this special episode of AMA's Marketing And. Greg, really appreciate your insights and being a part of our summit. Thank you all.